2. Please make the introductions to you. Thank you.
Welcome to the afternoon session. I hope we will be able to pursue some of the discussion of reflection driven onwards by experiment and work, rather than perhaps endless hermeneutic circles. We'll go into paper, we'll go into shooting, and we will go into the experience of printmaking as expanded language. Those are the 3 topics, and the 3 presenters are Eli Okkenhaug, who's the chief curator at KODE Art Museums in Bergen, Svend-Allan Sørensen, artist, Denmark, and Carlos Capellan, artist and professor from both Uruguay and Sweden. So, of course, these topics that have been given in headline are ways of shaking the trees and see what falls down. And I have also talked with the 3 panel contributors this afternoon during our informal socializing yesterday, and picked up a topic that might be worthwhile focusing on in the discussions after the panel presentations. I'll get back to that later. For the time being, I welcome Eli Okkenhaug, Chief Curator from KODE Art Museums in Bergen. She's going to talk about code and the art of printmaking, the challenge of exhibits.
First, I would like to thank Bjarn for inviting me to this seminar. And as a curator at KODE, I call it KODE because that's what we are calling it. It's a name, so that's why KODE. I choose to look at graphic art and works on paper from a museum's professional's point of view. I will present this paper in 2 parts. First, I will explore and focus on the graphic and paper-based artworks from our collection. I will also look closer at the importance of these artworks as part of the collection at KODE during the last 20 years. In order to explore this angle, it is natural to look at the museum's acquisition politics in this period and how private owners have had an influence in shaping the museum's collection. What governs the acquisitions? Can we see any tendencies in the acquisitions that have been made? Have there been any especially important acquisitions of graphic art and paper-based artworks? In the second part, I will look at my experience when creating collection-based exhibitions with graphic and other paper-based artworks. What challenges do I face as a curator when I use graphic art or paper-based artworks? What can I learn from it? Is this fast enough or is it too slow? It's okay? Yeah? So let's start. Now it comes a very beautiful picture of my brave work. This is taken one of the few days with sunny weather. So I'll keep it a while, okay? KODE Art Museum, so Bergen, sits in a beautiful location by the city park and a small lake in the city center. The museum consists of 4 buildings. Since its beginning, the museum has had many names, ownerships, locations, and gone through various expansions. The last great change came in 2006 when Bergen Art Museum, the West Norway Museum of Decorative Art, and the composers' homes of Edvard Grieg, Ole Bull, and Harald Sæverud were consolidated into one museum unit under one director and given the name the Art Museums of Bergen. In 2013, the new name KODE, Art Museums of Bergen, was launched. So then I'll turn to a more common, a winter picture, which is also nice. So I think this is in February. The collection at KODE comprises approximately of 43,000 works divided between art and design. The art collection contains 10,000 works, where a large part of the collection, namely 7,000 works, are paper-based. The remaining works are divided into paintings, sculptures, videos, installations, and 150 pieces of furniture and objects. The collections are built through acquisitions, donations, and long-term loans from collections of private owners. The last few years, the long-term loans from collections of private owners, as well as from foundations, have been predominant in the growth of the collections, largely because the acquisition budget remains unchanged. Acquisition Committee, a very short history. From 1984 till 1994, the Acquisition Committee at the then called Bergen Picture Gallery consisted of the museum's director and 4 artists appointed by the Artist Union. In 1994, the board of the museum came to the conclusion that it would be appropriate to appoint 2 acquisition committees, one for artworks older than 10 years, consisting of the museum director, 1 artist appointed by the Artist Union, 1 art historian appointed by the Art History Department at the University of Bergen, and 1 curator from the Bergen Picture Gallery. The other acquisition committee for art younger than 10 years consisted of the museum director, 2 artists appointed by the Artist Union, and 1 curator from the Bergen Picture Gallery. These 2 committees were active until 2003, when the board of the museum decided to establish a new internal acquisition committee. The new committee was replacing the 2 existing committees. This decision reflected upon the need for more efficiency of the acquisition committee's work and the wish to place the responsibility for the work done within the museum's own staff. The committee had the responsibility for acquisitioning of both elder and contemporary art and approval of gifts and long-term loans. Because of the consolidation of Bergen Art Museum and the West Norway Museum of Decorative Art, which took place in 2006, the acquisition committees from both museums merged in 2011 into 1 committee. This committee consists today of the museum director, 2 curators from the former Bergen Art Museum, and 1 curator from West Norway Museum of Decorative Art. The committee has the same mandate as the former committee at Bergen Art Museum. The directors and their preferences/choices. Gunnar B. Kvaran, originally from Iceland, was appointed new director of Bergen Picture Gallery in 1998, and in his period as a director, which only lasted 4 years, the Bergen public was introduced to an international exhibition program with renowned artists such as Fabrice, Hyber, Yoko Ono, and Errol. During this time, the museum changed the name from Bergen Picture Gallery to the more modern and international name Bergen Art Museum. So, what about the acquisitions of contemporary graphic art in the collection during his period? There were minor acquisitions of graphic art, 5 lithographs of Errol and 2 of the American Barbara Westman. And as you all know, Errol comes from Iceland. There were no acquisitions of Norwegian artists during Kvaran's period as a director. Gunnar B. Kvaran left Bergen Art Museum in 2001 for a new job as a director at Astrup Family Museum of Art here in Oslo. With the new director, Audun Eckhoff, Bergen Art Museum changed from being focusing on international art scene to a focus on the national art scene. This was reflected in the exhibition program as well as the museum's acquisitions. Due to a quite small acquisition budget, 1 million Norwegian crowns, Eckhoff introduced long-term loans from collections of private owners, companies, or galleries. This was a positive experience for the museum and strengthened the collection and filled the gaps in the collection. I'm sure long-time loans will be part of the museum's practice for a long time, as long as the museum has the same low budget, acquisition budget. With Audun Eckhoff's interest in Norwegian artists, the museum made an acquisition of no less than 14 lithographs by Bjarn Ransve in 2002. As it says in the annual report from 2002, quote, "With this purchase, the collection has strengthened its reputation of contemporary Norwegian art and deleted one of its biggest flaws." Audun Eckhoff in Annual Report, Art Museums of Bergen, 2002, page 14, end of quote. In 2002, the museums had a special focus on contemporary Norwegian photography and wanted to strengthen art forms which already was represented in the collection, and wanted to introduce new art forms. The museum made an acquisition of works by Per Berntsen and Mikkel Linden, Per Maning, and Tom Sandberg. Audun Eckhoff continued his focus on Norwegian art when it comes to acquisitions. So in 2005, the museum received a long-term loan of 131 engravings and woodcuts of the renowned Norwegian artist Knut Rumohr from his widow, Ågot Dorenfeldt Holtvek. The long-term loan was given to the museum a couple of years later. Another great event took place in 2006, when Bergen Art Museum and the DNB Savings Bank Foundation signed a management contract which indicated a long-term loan of of 1,100 artworks, including 94 engravings and 52 drawings by the Norwegian artist Nikolai Astrup. And as you know, we have a wing in the museum for this collection, which is now going to London. A very important contribution to the collection was the gift of 11 graphic artworks by the Norwegian artist Marianne Bratteli, by friends of the Bergen Art Museum, which also took place in 2006. By the end of Audun Eckhoff's period as a director, which lasted until 2009, more than 800 artworks were in long-term loan when including the Nikolai Astrup collection. As you know, Audun Eckhoff left Bergen to Oslo to take the position as the director of the National Museum of Art, Architecture and Design. So we had to get a new director. Erlend G. Høyersten, the next one, born in Bergen, continued the museum's focus on the national Norwegian art scene, but now it shifted towards the local art scene. The first year as a director in 2010, Høyersten created the exhibition PG1, where he wanted to visualize the diversity of Bergen as an art scene, or the complex ecosystem, as he called it. The exhibition was a huge success, and the local art scene finally felt included and taken seriously by the Art Museum. The museum made an acquisition of 12 works from the exhibition. This included 5 silkscreen prints by Toril Johannessen, and 4 mezzotint by Tom S. Kosmo. This one is at the contemporary exhibition from the collection now, shown at the museum. Høyersten continued the collaboration with donors and long-term loans from collection of private owners. He left Bergen for Aarhus, Denmark in 2013 to take the position as a director at Aros. With a new Danish, this time, director Karin Hinsbo, we see yet another change of interest, a focus on female artists. This is, for me personally, very exciting, partly because this is one of my special interests, and when it comes to female artists in the collection, they are surely lacking. We have still to see the outcome of this commitment towards female artists when it comes to acquisitions. So, let us sum up. Despite changes in the acquisition committee, from being a committee where artists and academics were represented, to a more internal committee based on members from the museum's own staff, it is predominantly the director's taste and preferences which govern the acquisitions. We can see a change from a focus on international contemporary art when it comes to both exhibitions and acquisitions, shifting towards national, and then the last 5 years, local contemporary art. There has been a growing interest and acceptance on Norwegian photography, which is reflected in the acquisitions of artworks by the renowned Norwegian photographers Torbjørn Rødland and Mette Tronvold. Since 1994, there were 2 big acquisitions of contemporary Norwegian graphic art that stands out. 11 graphic artworks by Marianne Bratteli and 14 graphic artworks by Bjarn Ransve. There is one big long-term loan of 131 engravings by Knut Rumohr, which was granted to the museum by the late Rumohr's widow in 2007. I will now move to look at my experience when creating collection-based exhibitions with graphic and other paper-based artworks. What challenges do I have as a curator when I use graphic art or paper-based artworks? What can I learn from it? At KODE, Art Museum in Bergen, my main occupation is curating contemporary art exhibitions. That is, curating temporary exhibitions as well as curating collection-based exhibitions from the collection. Every other year, there is a rehanging of the collection-based exhibition. And, of course, in this rehanging, I want to show artworks regardless of material, but that is easier said than done. When choosing paper-based artwork from the collection, such as photography, collage, mixed media, or installations where paper is incorporated, there is more to it than just finding the artwork in the storage and hanging the work on the wall like a painting. I have to involve the conservation department. And the paper conservator will conduct a condition report on the artworks. The paper conservator is also responsible for framing. Traditionally, works on paper require framing for display, as they generally are stored unframed. But KODE's collection of contemporary art also contains non-traditional paper-based artworks, such as this one, Fabrice Hyber, Peinture Homéopathique, excuse me, I don't speak French, but a large painting designed as a visual storyboard combining art and science. The painting is covered with epoxy and resin, where pieces of paper and a book are incorporated on the surface, either glued or nailed to the canvas. As you can imagine, this artwork is a huge challenge for a paper conservator. Many artists do not take into account that the artwork may need treatment after some time and are using different materials which are hard to replace. So, the paper conservator has to be flexible and be ready to understand the artist's intention, concept, and meaning behind the work when working on the non-traditional traditional paper-based art. A dialogue and understanding is therefore essential between the paper conservator and the curator in order to achieve the best results. As most of you are familiar with, works on paper and graphic art are sensitive to light exposure. From a paper conservator's point of view, the works on paper and graphic should only be sold for three months only, every 3 years at 50 lux. So there is a clash of interest here between the paper conservator, who of course wants to protect the artwork from the light intensity and exposure to light, and the curator, who wants the artworks on display as long as possible, regardless of any daylight. The curator has the public's access to the artwork and exhibition concept in mind. And as for the paper conservator, he or she has the well-being of the art in mind. When I prepare a rehanging of contemporary art-based exhibitions, I have to have a concept which includes a long list of works on paper I can choose from and make a rotation plan for the exhibition. The paper conservator must also be given the time to prepare the artworks on paper, which also include framing the works. But in some ways, the public is the winner here. They get to see more artworks on paper from the collection, and I get to learn more about the collection. When planning an exhibition and thinking of how to hang the artworks in the exhibition spaces, I can either place all the graphic and paper-based artworks in one exhibition space, where it's 50 lux, or I can choose to mix the paper-based work of art of other material. When doing the latter, I have to stick to 50 lux, not going up to 150. This will give the paintings a darker look than intended. To give you a comparison, a level of 50 lux is similar to the lighting in the home living room in the evening, and a standard office lighting is around 400 lux, and the direct sunlight measures 30,000 lux. Light damage is unfortunately cumulative and irreversible, so I have to take this into consideration when planning an exhibition of how often and how much an artwork is to be on display. When using indirect and low lighting, it spares the objects and will require less adjustment for the eyes from the areas of intense light to those of relative darkness. This will allow the use of lamps which are lower wattage throughout the exhibition space. There is a compromise here. I want the exhibition to turn out the best, and if I have to mix paper-based artworks with the artworks of other materials, and I have to please the paper conservator and keep the lux limit to 50. But even 50 lux is quite a low level. If it is even in the exhibition space, the eye will adjust and it will appear brighter. It is true. I have experienced it. In the opposite situation, with 150 lux on the paintings and 50 lux on the paper-based art, the paintings will appear bright and you will hardly be able to see the paper-based art. It is a common mistake to light different types of work individually. This is the exhibition spaces. Paper-based artworks can be an educational challenge. On one hand, it creates different issues such as lighting, planning, and concept realization. On the other hand, I can learn more about the collection and I get a closer look at the paper conservation issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. This is a kind of insider's view of almost ethnographic detail of what a collection is. And this particular collection at the KODE museums in Bergen, where 20 years of acquisitions, the tendencies of what is being selected, stakeholders are elements, and a context for the work of studying the acquisitions physically. How the work relations are vested in materials that require special care and technical procedure. And also a contrast between, on the one hand, slow-flowing processes that eventually freeze in description of acquisitions and their rationales, and on the other hand, the procedures of unfreezing the story of artists to be able to handle and study them. So this pairing of the curator and the paper conservator is something that I'd like to return to later on. Now, I will do a very short presentation because it's about Svend-Allan Sørensen, artist, Denmark, and he's going to talk about his work.
Hello, and also from me, thanks for the invitation. That's me. And I got to say something from the beginning, and that is that I don't know a lot about contemporary graphic art, but I think I know a little bit about what I do and how and why I do it. So this is a short presentation of my work. Hello, I'm Svend-Allan, and I want to talk about linocuts, woodcuts, lithographs, etchings, birds, words, and guns. In other words, I would like to talk about Svend-Allan and his work. This linocut is an answer to Johnny Cash, who used to enter the stage by saying, "Hello, I'm Johnny Cash." And I do also like country music. I was born on the countryside in Jutland, Denmark, and lived there until I was 22. My daddy had a poultry farm, and that may have had a certain influence on my work. I've gone hunting since I was 17, and I think my interest in ink is very closely related to my longing for muddy fields. The sound of mud and ink that is rolled out is almost the same. I started using text in my works because I found words more powerful than images. Words hit me much more than images do. I'm having a little issue with crows, or rather a passion. The crow that you'll meet in this part of the world is a very graphic bird. It's gray and black. Its call reminds me of splintered wood. I feel that crows talk to me in a way other birds don't. If you don't invest time and energy in something, you won't get any results. You got to go if you want to meet the crow. As I said, I feel that the crows and I talk together, or they talk to me in some data language. And I feel very present when they call at me. This little text is borrowed from Henry David Thoreau, for whom I also have a passion. I do also have a passion for good-looking guns used for hunting. This is a lithograph made at the Faroe Islands after a hunting trip. And I've been thinking that this image could be some explanation of hunting in the expanded fields. I use my guns for more than hunting. I've made several woodcuts with shotguns and rifles and even pistols. These prints were the first I made with a gun. I took the gun from the lithograph to the mountains outside Tórshavn, which is the capital of the Faroe Islands, and made these woodcuts. A pump gun can be loaded with 5 shots, and that makes the number of these woodcuts. The series is called One Shot, One Print, 1 to 5. And I guess it's what we could call graphic art in a conceptual field. The next 3 woodcuts are also made as singular prints. I found out after being working with different master printers that I needed the opposite. I needed some works that were not made as editions. These woodcuts are also about my passion for hunting. The texts are taken from an essay by William S. Burroughs, who also had something with guns and words. As I said, I do have a passion for Henry David Thoreau. I once read that the Ramones were fascinated by Thoreau as well. After reading that, I made this linocut, which is from a series of linocuts called Animal Soup of Time. And that's Thoreau himself. This portrait of Henry David Thoreau is 1 out of 3 portraits of writers who mean something important to me. The others are Russian writer Turgenev and Danish writer Boganis. And I got to, maybe some of you know this image and therefore know that I did not draw it. I just took it somewhere at the internet and transferred it to the lithographic stones by using acetone. I don't know if any of you know that technique. You do? Okay. Another one. This may not be graphic arts, but it is very related to my work and way of thinking. You see that little brass sign on the bottom, and the text on that is, "I believe I can fly." I bought those antlers in Sweden some years ago, and I knew that I had to do something about it, but not what. And then at the end of the year, I was watching X Factor with my kids, and I saw one little girl who participated by singing, "I believe I can fly." And then I thought, okay, that's what that moose is trying to tell us. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Yes. And now for some documentation. The following images are documentations of my way of installing my works. Someone once wrote that this way of installing could be like a beat poem. I try to let it flow and not to be systematic. And the rule is that there is no rules at all. You could see this as a speaking wall, I think. And that's from the same museum in the northern part of Jutland. This wall shows 100 laser prints showing me hunting. They are printed on miscellaneous colored paper. I tried to make something that maybe look like a big painting that may be some kind of abstraction of a piece of nature somewhere. I don't know if I succeeded, but that was my attempt. This is a smaller bead wall, still talking to the audience about nature. All these graphic works in this exhibition were woodcuts, because it made sense to me to make woodcuts, since I speak so much about nature. And I think the context of a woodcut is the nature. The context of a linocut is something else. That could be some political point of view. Yeah. The next 3 images show the installation of 133 graphic works for my solo exhibition called Country and Concept at Museum Jorn in Denmark 2 years ago. I tried to find out what I'm interested in and where it all comes from. This concentration of that investigation turned out as the two words country and concept. And there you see Henry David Thoreau and Boganis and Turgenev. This is from the exhibition called Prize Print, the Queen Sonja Print Award, which was on display at the Scandinavia House in New York City, mid-April to August this year. And as some of you may know, I was the one who ran into the Queen Sonja Print Award last year. And that gave some exhibitions, and it's probably also why I'm here today. I'm not sure. It is. Jan agrees. And I showed 30 works at that exhibition. You see the portrait together with Turgenev and Boganis. We'll see a little movie about the big violet prints in a few minutes. And you see, to me it's quite dark, but I don't know if you see it. But on the left side there's a triptychon. And that is made in company with the Queen herself. She brought in to the Atelier Larsen workshop in Helsingborg 3 prints that needed something. They were made at the late Kjell Newton studio some years ago. And she asked me if I could do something about them or put something into them. And her story is, I don't remember if it's the true story, but I'm pretty sure it is. But she asked me if I was able to draw a duck on them. And I'm not the kind of artist who drew ducks. So I, first of all, I forgot the story about the duck, and then I went to my hotel room thinking about what I had to do, and I came out with a little piece of Thoreau text that was cut into pieces and put together again. And it says, "The bird is gone and there's no trace beyond." The dog has left the building, so to speak. Yes. And the next 4 images are from my latest solo exhibition that closed on Sunday. At Kunsthal, a little summer castle here in Oslo. And I find out after making this exhibition I find out before I made the exhibition that King Oscar I of Norway and Sweden started making the building of the castle exactly 18 days after Henry David Thoreau left Walton Pond in Massachusetts. And I guess many of you know about Henry David Thoreau, and if you don't, I would like to tell you about him later. And as you may have figured out, Thoreau means a lot to me. So I found it quite interesting that Kunsthal and his stay at Walton Pond are from the exact same time, except from a gap of 18 days. And I called the exhibition Miscellaneous Notes on Nordic Birds, and that's a paraphrase of Thoreau's book, Notes on New England Birds. It's not his famous book, which is called Life in the Woods, but he made a lot of notes, and that's that book. I think my work as such can be seen as miscellaneous notes, which is probably what the woman who said that I make exhibitions that looks like bead poems. I guess it's probably more or less the same. And that's all in Danish. Some of you are lucky to understand it, some of you aren't. But I can tell you so much that the word kraven means the crow. And they are all some kind of explanations about what a crow is and what the crow does. And what I did was to to Google some answers. Google is my best friend, I think. And maybe I wrote language is language does, language can, etc. And that gave me some answers. And then I just changed the subjects from the language to the crow, or from life to crow, from death to crow, whatever came up to my mind. And that's, yeah, I got some, I guess some would say abstract sentences about what a crow is, but I think, in my opinion, they make sense because they do not make sense. Maybe. Yes, and this is the last image before the video. And I guess that's, there's been a lot of talking about art students, and I think the most important thing an art student should do is to screw it all, to forget about what was learned yesterday, and just do what the actual person has to do. And I have been teaching for many years, and I'm not sure that I can say it more clearly than that. Thank you, and now a little movie.
Jeg søgte i mange år efter et udtryk, der med en tilpas løshed og tyngde kunne indramme det, jeg længe har ønsket at fortælle. Den mulighed tror jeg, at jeg har fundet i grafikken, det vil sige arbejdet med papir, metal, sten og i dette tilfælde træ. Her arbejder jeg med en let omskrevet tekst af den amerikanske forfatter Henry David Thoreau. Jeg skriver spejlvendt, hvilket gør, at det ser ud som om, at jeg skriver baglæns, det vil sige backward. Jeg bruger gerne værktøj, som normalt er tiltænkt andre opgaver. Her bruger jeg en dremel. Den har en voldsomhed, som passer godt til krydsfiner. Det giver en usikkerhed i stregen, men det giver også et eksperiment. Jeg kan vældig godt lide det usikre eksperiment. Træpladen eller stokken, som den retligt kaldes, renses for træsplinter. Stokken bæres ind til Ole Larsens presse, som er verdens største. I baggrunden trykker man mine kobbertryk. Ole laver en fast ramme for stokken, så den ligger helt stille, når den trykkes. Pressen indstilles til et korrekt tryk. Og bagefter bliver der lavet et blindtryk, så vi er sikre på, at alt er indstillet rigtigt. Stokken bæres over til indsværtning. Sværten er en blanding af farverne Payne's Grey og kromoxidgrøn. Jeg trykker meget sjældent med ren sort sværte, men i en anden meget mørk tone, som har en anden rummelighed og mulighed og krop. Ole blander sværten ud fra mine fabuleringer. Heri blander han sværten i en oliefernis. Stokken valses op. Stokken bæres over i pressen. Og trykpapir og filt lægges over. Og der trykkes. Vi trækker trykket baglæns ud af pressen og væk fra stokken. Vi går trykket efter. Og er tilfredse. Nu har jeg trykket 2 eksemplarer med denne meget nordiske tone, og et med en helt anden sværte, sulferino violet hedder den. Man skal huske at satse og gøre det, man ikke selv forventer at gøre. Jeg synes i høj grad, at grafik for mig handler om at punktere min egen comfort zone konstant. Og det gør denne sulferino violet. Vi har nu trykt i alt 3 tryk af træsnittet og er færdige.
Thank you, Svend-Allan, for sharing these moments and impetus of your work. Later on, I thought we'd discuss dependencies. We'll get back to that later, but in this case, for me, dependency evokes the relationship between printing and hunting, between ink and mud, words and dogs, recoil and atmosphere, print and pressure. The next contributor is Carlos Capellan, artist and professor at Uruguay and Sweden. He's, the title of his presentation is The Experience of Printmaking as an Expanded Language. Please, Carlos.
Okay. Hello, everybody, again. In this brief presentation, I will share a selection of the body of work that I have produced in the last 30 years. For the purpose of the topic of this seminar, I would like to emphasize printmaking as central to the body of works that I have produced during this time. But doing this is reducing, really, what I'm doing when I'm working with these kind of things. But for the purpose of this seminar, I will reduce it to the idea of printmaking. All right. Before I present the works, I would like to share with you a conceptual background to the works. During the opening of this conference, I signaled my view that artistic practices had witnessed a redefinition of many genres and paradigms. Allow me to repeat myself. I suggested, for instance, that painting is not anymore reduced to the usage of oil and canvas. Sculpture does not solely depend on the classic use of marble or bronze. Drawing has become a popular tool for the neo-conceptual, and the expanded notion of graphic art is now an accepted object for academic discussion. Furthermore, freed from the various traditional boundaries, the different genres of art have pollinized each other, stimulating new vitality at the crossroads of their practices. On a more personal level, this is how printmaking has worked for me for quite a long time, as an inspirational procedure. For instance, during the mid-80s, I selected a limited set of 25 to 30 figures that I would work with and reproduce hand-drawn or painted. They would appear on different sizes and on any kinds of surfaces. I also decided to do this for a specific and predetermined period of time. The traditional tool for printmaking, like the matrix, the print, and the edition, were in this process replaced by the idea, the drawn figure, photography, a projector, and all kinds of available surfaces. At this stage of the project, the edition would not be limited by any numeration whatsoever, but by time. The edition will continue during not less than 10 years. So the edition was 10 years long. At the core of the project was the idea that by repeating these figures, I could bring into question the notion of personal expression, usually associated to the spontaneous gestures of the artist. I could instead focus on the process of production of meaning and language, and at the same time, work beyond formal definitions of art genres. The individual art piece would then become a kind of collateral result of such an ongoing process. There will be many ways to approach the drawings, paintings, artist books, actions, sculptures, installations, writing, etc., that I have produced. Relating them to printmaking is just one possible way to look at them. The works that I'm about to show do not aspire to be prints, but are instead a series of procedures inspired by the experience of printmaking as expanded language. So let me show you some images now. These are just a few of the images that I selected during the 80s and decided I will use them a lot for a period of 10 years. The date of this work is wrong. This is from 87, actually, and this is one of the many artist books that I've done. There was a photocopy on book pages and touched with mud and soil. So this is also a more ritualized approach to a work. I went to Turku in Finland, and I gathered some soil, which I brought back to Sweden where I was working, and then I used this soil in order to represent it on a map of Turku. And of course, the map represented also my self-portrait. This is just a tiny fragment of a large piece in which I try to ritualize the surface. I painted the walls with milk, Coca-Cola, and wine. You get a beautiful patina and some beautiful smell that everybody sort of recognized. The smell of milk brings you back to when you were a kid, and then the smell of wine is very well known, so this is also associated to memory. And smell as a place, in a material for the work, of course. Now, this is about the living room as a context. I was touching the walls with mud, painting the walls of the gallery space or the museum with my hands, using mud. And I was representing the coziness of the living room, the private sphere of the living room. And this is the exhibition space as a chill-out spot. I work on large scales with this idea. The project was called Maps and Landscapes, in which I sort of mixed the aesthetic of the living room and then the aesthetic of the gallery space, the museum space. But I used a lot of sofas and tables and chairs because I wanted people to come and spend time. And then a dim light, and it was chill-out space, which became very, very popular, particularly among young people who used to go there and just spend time. You know, I like that, making it cozy. This is also about the private and the public, and it's the aesthetics of the living room meeting the museum space. and the collections. I have several different kinds of collections. It was also a large installation piece. And this was also a large installation piece that I made for the Venice Biennale, in which I like to deal with the fragmentation of and the solitude in the living room. So the idea was that, you know, the living room had become a very sterile place, and it was all about solitude and fragmentation. So the lighting was very, very dim. So here, this is also about representation, and it's called dematerialization and rematerialization. And of course, I'm working here with the notion of anamorphic figure, which I like very much working with anamorphic figures, because they do not respect the central perspective that we got to use since Renaissance. You have to see it from the sides, and then you get different information from there. And then there you have two stones where I engraved these two key words, dematerialization, rematerialization. And then you have a pile of books, and then a piles of plates that have been crushed by the stone, with a stone. So this is more of the same, working with the anamorphic figure. The only thing that here I'm also showing a painting on canvas, handmade, in 3 bottles with ashes of burned books. Say no more. And this is about representation in 2-dimensional space. If you want, you can call this a painting, since this is made on canvas. And of course, I was using soil and earth pigments and ink. And this is a series of works that I made that I call the monochrome series. Now, more about this 2-dimensional space. This is a more classical approach. It's acrylic paint on canvas, and it's red, black on red. This is also painting that I cut, and I like the idea of cutting works. And this is a project that I did when I got in contact with the Parihaka community in New Zealand. This is a Maori community that 1866 started a non-violent fight against the English colonial powers. And this collective movement, you know, people got killed, they got arrested, and they were sent away. But they continued the fight until this very day today. If you go to New Zealand, you can visit the Parihaka community, which is a very strong Maori community. And I had a wonderful time working with them. And then I went to Durban, South Africa, and I got in contact with the Phoenix ashram, or the Phoenix community. The Gandhi started there in 1906. Now, Gandhi, who everybody knows because he sort of started the Satyagraha movement, that is the non-violent movement, he was very much influenced by the Parihaka community. So he even sent letters to the Parihaka community at the time. So what I was trying to do here was to connect the south-south-south horizons, the horizons of the south, working in New Zealand, in Australia, in South Africa, in Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile. This is something I have done for years, trying to connect the south. Because people living in the south, in order to talk to each other, if you want to go from Montevideo to, let's say, New Zealand, you have to fly to London first, and then from London all the way down to New Zealand. Or you fly from Montevideo to Los Angeles, and from there to Australia. So the idea of connecting the South is a political idea, and this is something I've been working with for years. Oops. All right. Right. A drawing in a frame and a wall. And I believe that the wall is part of the composition. It's sort of redefining the place of the drawing in the space of the frame. This is more or less the same. This is one drawing composed of 3 pieces. And I like to think that the empty spaces, the empty spaces in between the drawing, that is the wall space, is part of the composition. And this is a show I did recently in Canada, and it was all about the art of drawing, and it was drawing on paper. So this is just one little installation that I did right there on the spot, just using paper and drawings and information. So allow me to end with 3 self-portraits, because in order to deconstruct all ideas about art and things, I suppose that I should deconstruct my personal self as well. And then I realized years ago that self-portrait is one of these magical moments in art history. And this is when the artist looks at himself in the eye and try to catch the gaze, and then he goes away, then the audience takes the place of the artist. You know, this is kind of symbiotic, very stupid thing. So I try to work with the idea of self-representation and self-portrait in some cases. So here is a self-portrait as a silhouette. This is a self-portrait in time. And this is a self-portrait in space. Anyways, I think this is it from me right now. And I'd like to show you a little kind of pornographic little image, which is this. This is me in Malmö, 1979, when I started as a student at the art school Forum in Malmö. So people, you students, please don't lose hope. There is a life after this, all right? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.